boys and girls, Mrs. Vranish here. I'm going to be reading to you Chapter 10 of Stolen Girl today. As you are listening, I'd like you to think about how school is going for Nadia so far. And when you're done listening, I'd like you to tell me at least 2 details from the book as to why you think school is going the way it is. Chapter 10, Linda. Those first few weeks of school were better than the horrible first day. Miss McIntosh taught one of the higher grades that she'd nod to me when we passed in the hallway. Knowing she was in the building gave me comfort. It was the same with Mikhailo. For all anyone could tell, we were strangers, but we were the only DP kids there, and we had a special bond. After school, he would often drop by. He even helped me with homework once. If the other boys ever knew that, he would be teased. But I had Linda to play with at recess, and each day English seemed easier. I was grateful that Miss Ferris would not tolerate me being called the Hitler girl in her presence. But that didn't stop Eric and David from whispering it behind my back. One recess, as Linda and I were walking around the schoolyard, pretending to be interested in watching the other children play, she turned to me and asked, "Would you like to come to my place after school today?" I was delighted with the invitation, but had to say no. Mama wouldn't know where I was, I told her. "Can you come to my house instead?" Linda grinned. "I could do that. I'll let Grace know and she can tell Mom and Dad where I am." It felt nice walking all the way home with someone to talk to. Linda loved the swing Ivan had made for me. I showed her through the house as well. When I opened the doors to each of the rooms, I tried to see it through Linda's eyes. Would she think that we were extremely poor? What would she think of the chip tub in the bathroom and the repainted icebox in the kitchen? She hadn't commented on the cinder blocks that we used as backdoor steps, but I noticed her looking at them. When we got up to my bedroom, she sat on the bed and tested the springs. "Comfy," she said, "and I love the lilac-colored walls. Everything here is so fresh." I looked at her face to see if she was making fun of me. I was sure that most of the kids at school had nicer homes than mine, but she seemed sincere. "You must love it here," she said. I was beginning to get used to my new home, and Canada was growing on me. Did I love it? Maybe. "The place I lived in before was much nicer than this," I said. The words were out before I knew it. "Where was that?" asked Linda, flopping down on the bed. "In Europe," I said, my heart starting to hammer. Why had I started this conversation? "If you had a nicer place, why did you come here?" I said nothing. I wished I could take back the words I had already let out. "Doesn't make sense," said Linda. "It was because of the war. I hoped that would end the conversation." She looked at me strangely. "If you had a nicer place, were your parents well off?" she asked. Meaning, did your parents have a lot of money? I opened my mouth to reply, but then closed it again. Why had I started this conversation? I was kidding, I told Linda. We were just regular people. Mikhailo had warned me to never let Canadians know that Marussia and Ivan weren't my real parents, because the government could take me away from them. Marussia had warned me too, all those years at the camp and on the ship. I was so mad at myself for coming so close to betraying them. The last thing I wanted was to be separated from the only 2 people who had ever cared for me. I smiled at Linda and shrugged, hoping she'd brush off my comment. "Nadia, I'm home!" The sound of the front door creaking open and Marussia's footsteps on the wooden entranceway made me practically jump out of my skin. "I'm up here," I called down, "with a friend." I could hear Marussia walking into the kitchen on the level below us and the rustling of the grocery bag as she set it on the table. Then I heard her footsteps on the stairs. In a few seconds, she appeared in the doorway of my bedroom. "There you are, Nadia." She looked from me to Linda. "Are you going to introduce me to your friend?" Mama, this is Linda." Linda, this is my mother. Linda scrambled to her feet and held out her hand. Glad to meet you, Mrs. Kravchuk. Marussia shook Linda's hand. Come on downstairs in a couple of minutes. I'll go make you a treat. She turned and walked back down the stairs. When we could hear her down in the kitchen again, Linda whispered to me, What did she do in the war? I didn't know how to answer that. Why hadn't I been quiet about it like Mikhail had warned me to? I'll tell you about it later. Let's go get our snack, I said, hoping she would forget all about this. When we went downstairs, Marussia had sliced an apple in a bowl for each of us and drizzled them both with honey. You can take it outside to eat if you'd like, she said, but bring the bowls back when you're finished. The swing was just wide enough to hold us both if we squeezed on together, and Linda's legs were long enough to keep it steady, so that's where we sat together and ate our snack. This is yummy, said Linda, crunching with satisfaction. I loved the gooey treat too. It wasn't something Marussia had ever made just for us. I guess she wanted to serve something special for my friend. She always tried so hard to make things good for me. It made me feel guilty for the things I had said to Linda. Linda looked over to the house and whispered to me, She can't hear us from inside, can she? I don't think so. So what did she do during the war? I slowly swallowed the piece of apple that sat on my tongue. I was just being silly, I said. She was a factory worker. What about you? Asked Linda. It must have been exciting to grow up in the middle of a war. Exciting? I never thought about it that way. So terrifying that I couldn't remember half of it. That's what it was to me. I was young, I said. It's all jumbled in my mind. Tell me what you remember then. So I told her about Marussia and I escaping and our arrival at the displaced persons camp. Linda's eyes went wide as I told her some things. I held back the ones about the German family. The back door opened and Marussia stuck her head out. You two are cozy on that swing, she said, grinning. Finish up your apples. Linda, Nadia and I will walk you home. I can walk myself home, said Linda. We would like to walk you home, said Marussia. She washed and polished some apples and put them in a paper bag to take with us. I was puzzled at first, but then realized what Marussia was up to. She wanted to meet Linda's parents. The apples were a gift. Linda's one-story yellow brick house was on Usher Street, behind the railway station and one street closer than the Ukrainian church. I had passed it by it on the way to church, but never realized she lived there. Would you like to come in? Linda asked. That's not necessary, said Marussia. I just wanted to make sure that you got home safe. Linda knew as well as I did that the real reason for this little walk home was to check out her family. Wait here, she said. I want my mom to meet you. She ran ahead of us and flew in the front door of her house. A moment later, a careworn woman drying her hands on a blue apron stepped out onto the front step and greeted us, Linda peeking out from behind her. I'm Rita Henhock, Linda's mother. I'm Marussia Kravchuk, and this is my daughter, Nadia. Here are some apples, she added, holding the bag out to Mrs. Henhock. I picked them today. Mrs. Henhock took the bag and smiled. Are they from your own tree? No, said Marussia. I work at a farm. Mrs. Henhock nodded in understanding. Can you come in for a cup of tea? She opened the door wide. A striped cat darted between her legs and ran out onto the road. I was about to chase after him, but Linda's mother said, Don't worry, he'll be back. Joe never misses his supper, which is dinner. We stepped inside the house and were enveloped by warmth and a savory scent of something cooking. Excuse the mess, said Mrs. Henhock. I've been making corn cakes. There was no mess. The front door led directly into a living room that had only a few pieces of furniture in it. They had a worn sofa, 2 hardback chairs, and a wooden chest that served as a coffee table. There were no bookshelves and the wooden floor was bare, but it was a tidy room. I could tell that the Henhocks were poor but proud like us. So Linda had been sincere about the nice things she'd said about our house. That made me feel so much better. Beyond that was a kitchen with a red linoleum floor, so newly mopped that it was glistening. A carved wooden bowl covered with a checkered cloth sat on one end of the kitchen table. Linda's older sister sat on a chair at the opposite side of the table, a textbook and binder spread out before her, and a half-finished glass of milk close at hand. Grace looked up when we stepped in, gave a bit of a wave, and went back to her homework. "Make yourselves comfortable," Mrs. Henhock said, indicating the sofa. "I'll put the kettle on." "That would be lovely," said Marcia. She sat down on the sofa and patted the spot beside her. I sat down. "And some milk for you, young lady?" Mrs. Henhock asked me. I wasn't thirsty, but Marcia nudged me in the ribs, so I too said that would be lovely. Linda went into the kitchen to help. In a few moments, she came back out, carrying 2 glasses of milk and 2 mugs of tea on a tray. Her mother came out of the kitchen with a platter of small golden cakes. I held my corn cake in both of my hands and blew on it to cool down. Marcia took a bite of hers. Smacking her lips with delight, she said, "This is delicious." I bit into mine and had to agree. It was like butter, corn, and bacon all mixed together. "It's an old family recipe," said Mrs. Henhock. "I'm glad you like them." Marcia and Mrs. Henhock made small talk while Linda and I sat impatiently waiting for them to finish. I would have liked to explore the neighborhood with Linda, or at least explore the house, but I knew this step was necessary. Marcia was very protective of me. Finally, Marcia finished her tea and set down the cup. "It was so good to meet you," she said. We both stood. "They seem like nice people," said Marcia as we walked back home. "You can go there after school sometimes, but you've got to let me know the day before."